listening to the Fantasy Takeaway Podcast with Murphy Hamilton and Joe Pollock. Proud member of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. Subscribe, listen, take home the title.
What's up, Takeaway Nation? Welcome in to the Finals Week episode. Sadly, I'm all alone this time. Both Jeff and Joe had previous things going on. You know, we're all adults. They just got away from us. But I am not alone exactly because I have Chris McConnell of the RotoBros Podcast on to help me out. Chris, thanks so much for jumping in with me.
Hey, thanks for having me, buddy. It's good to be here. Good to be keeping you some company while everybody else is out doing their own thing. I
mean, who better to turn to? You and Mark are arguably the two greatest friends of the show, so it's always fun to have you on here.
Oh, we love it. We love it, man.
And, sadly, Mark's not here because me and him could just razz on Producer Man all day. You know,
no, that's true.
Joe on this show.
Yeah, you guys do that pretty effortlessly. I can promise you that. I'm like the only one that's like, I'm nice to the producer man. I'm like, please keep producing our show.
Yeah, I was like that for the first year or so. And then, finally I knew I had to put Joe in his place. He's going to be editing this and he's going to just kill me after this is over. So let's dive into some football, Chris, and get away from me getting a death sentence.
Dude, it's championship week.
Yeah.
It's championship week, Mark.
It's finally over. I'm sad. I don't want it to be over.
Oh my God. Cause you imagine in 2 months, 2 or 3 months, we're going to have pitchers and catchers reporting. And I'm like, no, I mean, I don't mind baseball, Murph, but man, it is agonizing having to wait for football to start in August. And so at least we got the draft and the combine and pro days and all that kind of stuff to kind of hold us over. But it's agonizing.
For us, the season never really ends. I mean, if you think about it, you and I will be doing rookie prospects. Then once the draft happens, we'll be doing team outlooks and different other things for our separate shows. So, I mean,
right.
There's always tons to do in the off season, and I'll get excited about playoff NBA games, but you're right. Until football comes back, it's going to be a real sad desert here.
But until that happens, it's championship week and everybody needs to get excited because hopefully most of the listeners are getting ready to gear up to win that fantasy hardware.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I want to start this show out, Chris, by talking about the Carolina Panthers, more specifically Will Grier getting his first start in championship week. What are your thoughts on Will Grier and how does it pertain to players like, Moore and Samuel and Christian McCaffrey? I mean, obviously the big name Christian McCaffrey. Well,
so obviously there's this tier of players, Murph, where it's like, it doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't matter if they're playing on one leg. It doesn't matter if they have no arms and legs. You are starting them. And that's like Michael Thomas, Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, and Christian McCaffrey is in that category. So it doesn't matter what the situation is. Christian McCaffrey is going to be fine. He's going to figure out a way through it. So there's nothing to worry about with Christian McCaffrey. Now I know a lot of people are worried about DJ Moore, but here's the thing. Kyle Allen looked pretty solid the first few games, right? He looked like a quality, not just a quality backup, but a quality quarterback overall. And so now, obviously, as the season's gone along, it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And so much so that they feel like they need to see the last 2 games, what they have in Will Grier before they decide to let Cam go, get a quarterback, bring Cam back, and do what have you for 2020. But the thing about it is that everybody's so worried about, okay, well, this could affect Greg Olsen. This could affect Curtis Samuel. This could affect DJ Moore. With DJ Moore, you're starting him no matter what. And here's why. If you are starting him with Kyle Allen, you've got to be starting him with Will Grier. And I'm going to tell you why. Number one, we have seen how great DJ Moore is with his run after the catch, right? So yards after the catch, he is phenomenal. His yards after the catch may not have to be as impressive as long as Will Grier continues to be a downfield, a quarterback that attacks, downfield. And so that's what Will Grier is. He is not afraid to rip it. And this is a guy that's going to take chances because he's only got 2 games to showcase himself. So if we think that in a Norv Turner offense that he is just going to sit back and just casually dink and dunk down the field, Alex Smith, Colt McCoy wise, that's not going to happen. Will Grier is going to let it rip, and he's going to make mistakes. He's not a great quarterback, and he's probably not going to be, proved to be the Panthers' future, under center for that franchise. But if you were starting DJ Moore with a lot less aggressive, a lot more conservative quarterback in Kyle Allen, and probably a worse quarterback in Kyle Allen, you've got to be starting with Will Grier, because there's a chance that Will Grier's worse than Kyle Allen, but I don't think the chances are that large. I think Will Grier is a better option at quarterback for a guy like DJ Moore. So look, it literally Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, it doesn't change for me. Really the same thing with all the receiving weapons, Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen. I'm not worried about any of them. I'm treating them the exact same way that I would treat them with Kyle Allen, and I'm actually hoping for a lot better because, again, Will Grier loves to attack downfield, and he can throw the ball vertical, and he's not afraid to let it rip. So I'm looking forward to see what he can do.
Well, let me ask this then, kind of on the other side of that, nothing to do with Will Grier, but back to Christian McCaffrey. You know, you're in week 16, week 17. The team is out of contention. Are you worried about Christian McCaffrey's workload being limited? He's probably still going to play, but limited.
Not really. I mean, I just think, I think he's so, even if he gets, 15 touches as opposed to the normal 20-25, like I still think he's going to be more than efficient with those and more than adequate with that. And I don't think that is, I don't think that's something that you need to say, oh, okay, well, he's not getting 20 touches this game. I guess I just have to take him out of my lineup. No, this is not a guy that you are going into the most pivotal week of the fantasy season and then saying, I took this guy fifth, in the top 5 in the draft. I'm just going to sit him when it means on the day, the weekend that it means more than anything during the season. You just don't do it with guys like that. I'm sorry. And there's numerous examples floating around that we'll probably get to later on. But yeah, Christian McCaffrey, nobody should worry at all about Christian McCaffrey, not even a little bit.
Can we just sit back for 1 second and appreciate there's a player in fantasy that we might actually say, man, he only got me 15 points this week?
And who would that be, Murph?
Christian McCaffrey. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and look, I think with a lot of people have come to expect the 25 to 30 point range for Christian McCaffrey, and I get it. He's been unbelievable. He's been the best running back in football all year and in fantasy. So you can't really blame people for kind of, being a little disappointed that it was only 15 points. But man, I'm telling you, like, I would imagine he's probably going to get more than 15 points this week, to be honest with you. So again, I'm not worried about Christian McCaffrey. I don't think anybody should be. You are deploying Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore just as you normally would.
100% agree. All right, that'll do it for our little intro topic. Let's dive into the show. There's no news, so let's dive into the injury roundup.
Injury roundup.
All right, first up, players to IR. Just Evan Ingram this week. Chris, are you starting any Giants wide receiver? I mean, I know Evan Ingram going down is going to help their production, but with Eli Manning in one more game, are you?
Actually, Daniel Jones is supposed to be playing this week. He's supposed to be back. So I actually like the Giants receivers even more. So yeah, if I have Darius Slayton, I'm probably going to be playing Darius Slayton, depending on what my options are, obviously. But yeah, I mean, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate. I'm not worried about any of these guys this week. Obviously, there's going to be one of them that isn't as productive because you're typically not going to be supporting three guys that have great fantasy weeks on one team if you're a rookie quarterback like Daniel Jones. But I do think that all in all, this is going to be a solid week for the Giants. Again, playing Washington, they are, I believe they are on the road if I'm not mistaken. So look, I think that this is a solid matchup for them. I think Daniel Jones is going to want to close out the season on a high note. Obviously, from a fantasy perspective, he has a high floor himself with his rushing ability. But yeah, no, I think out of all of them, I think Sterling Shepard is probably the guy I like most. And I would probably go with Golden Tate second after that, just because I think they have higher floors at this point than Darius Slayton does, because I know Slayton is more of that big play sort of receiver. But man, you know how I feel about Darius Slayton. He was one of my draft darlings, and I am absolutely in love with Darius. I think he's a future alpha wide receiver. I do. I really think so. But that's in the future. This is championship week. So yeah, I mean, there's a couple people that have asked me about Sterling Shepard this week, and I'm like, look, unless you have better options, I would feel comfortable starting Sterling Shepard. I'd have no problem with that whatsoever.
I keep believe I slipped up and forgot about Daniel Jones being back. 2 weeks of Eli Manning just got me into that depression mode where you think Eli Manning's never going to go away. My mind wasn't clicking right. That's Eli depression talking right there. All right, let's move on to players that are guaranteed out for this week. So let's start with Dalvin Cook. He's going to be out this week with that shoulder injury. You've got Alexander Mattison, who's dealing with an ankle injury and is limited, may not even play. So we got Mike Boone and CJ Ham as the backups there. Are you rolling out either one if both Cook and Madison don't play? Because Madison's the no-brainer if Cook doesn't play and he's healthy.
Yeah, so Cook doesn't look like he's going to play. It looked yesterday afternoon, Mike Zimmer said he felt good about his chances playing because the shoulder didn't seem to bother him that much. But since between yesterday afternoon and early this morning, there was some sort of setback. So Dalvin Cook is not expected to play. So it looks like if Madison can play, he's going to be the guy. But he's questionable. He did not practice today. So that is not a good sign for him on Sunday. So it does look like it is going to be the Mike Boone show. Mike Boone's a talented running back. He's not Dalvin Cook, okay, but he is along the lines of Alexander Madison as far as from a talent perspective. He was really good coming out of Cincinnati as a Bearcat. But yes, the answer to your question is yes, I am going to play Mike Boone. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to say you got to start him everywhere. But I do believe that there are. I think he's probably a top 15 running back if Alex and Dalvin are out. I'm not CJ Ham. I don't think is probably going to get that many touches, and same for Amir Abdullah behind them. So Mike Boone, I think, is going to be a full blown workhorse this week if Alex and Dalvin are out, and he's going to win some people their leagues. I think he's going to have a pretty solid day. I won't even go out on a limb and say he'll go for 100 yards and like 2 touchdowns, but. I think we'll see 80 to 90 yards and probably a score for Mike Boone. I think he's going to have a pretty solid game. It is a pivotal game against Green Bay for playoff seeding purposes. So, we'll see how that turns out. But I think you could do a lot worse than Mike Boone this week.
There's that part of me that's terrified that Mike Boone will have like 80 yards and then CJ Ham will get vultured in for those 2 touchdowns and just ruin people's entire week.
We've seen it before.
It's scary. All right, moving on. Josh Jacobs will be out this week with that shoulder. So it's DeAndre Washington or Jalen Richard. Are you risking it on either one of those guys?
No, not really. I mean, it depends on who my options are. But I would venture to say that the vast majority of teams that are in championship week have better options than DeAndre Washington. I know my partner Mark on the RotoBros podcast, he is a bigger proponent of DeAndre Washington this week than I am. But there, we got into a little debate last night on our show. Would you start Adrian Peterson or would you start DeAndre Washington? And I get it. For a lot of people in PPR, they would start DeAndre Washington. But look, Jalen Richard is going to be involved. Okay, the Oakland Raiders aren't very good. I don't care how good their offensive line has been this year. And look, the Redskins are at home. It's going to be a competitive game. It's going to be a close game. So it's not like the Giants are going to be blowing them out and they're going to have to pass to catch up. It's more than likely going to be a competitive game at home. They're going to be running the football. Darius Geis is not in the picture anymore. And Adrian Peterson, quite frankly, is a better bet for goal line touches. Now, he might go for 6. He may have 16 carries for 67 yards, but he might also have those 2 touchdowns. So that's a risk I'm willing to take on a guy that's probably going to handle a good amount of the workload on the ground. So I'm not a huge proponent of DeAndre Washington. In DFS, I would imagine he's a better option than he is in season long. But look, if you're in your season long championship, man, there's so many better options, I think, this week than DeAndre Washington. So I'm probably just not even going to risk that.
All right. And finally, I'm just going to mention Chris Godwin here. We're actually going to talk about him more in our mailbag segment coming up shortly, but I just want to mention him as being out this week. Just a real sad blow for the Bucs, losing both Godwin and Evans in 2 weeks. That's just awful. Yeah, and now you're the Bucs' top 2 receivers are Rashad Perriman, who lit it up last week for 3 touchdowns over 100 yards, and Justin Watson, the physical freak. And like I was a big fan of Justin Watson. I've been a big fan of Justin Watson, but I thought last week that this might be a shot to be really involved and kind of break out a little bit. I think I was probably a week early with that. I think this week is obviously a better week because now he is the unquestioned number 2 guy, especially with Scotty Miller on IR as well. So they're hurting at wide receiver, but look, they're just gonna throw the ball around because they're not very good at running the football in the first place. So and to me, this has the makings of a game where you don't want Carlos Hyde, you don't want Ronald Jones or Peyton Barber or Duke, maybe Duke Johnson since he's the primary pass catcher. But if you're looking for at a running back, I think you need to stay far away from Carlos Hyde because I think this is going to be like a 38-31 type of game with the Texans. This is just not a matchup for any of those running backs the game script does not look good, but it does look good for guys like Brashad and Justin and Jameis, obviously. So look, how many people just love the fact that they were able to get Chris Godwin at a value this year? Like there was the hype machine that bumped him up several rounds, but for the most part, for what you've gotten out of him, he was a value in the draft.
And, you're looking at guys that are out, this week, like Josh Jacobs, Dalvin Cook, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Like, these are all guys that people were like so excited about and were top flight at their position all season long. And they're not even have them in the fantasy finals. So I tell you what, man, fantasy can just really kick you in the gut sometimes, can it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I'm going to go ahead and toot the horn for Jeff and Joe since they're not here. We were all really high on Chris Godwin on this show to start the season. We had him ranked in our top teens. We were very excited about him, and he produced better than we expected. But we were way higher in the fantasy industry entirely on him. So little, tooting our own horn. I know y'all do that on the RotoBros a little bit. So
do it
here.
Yeah, we loved Godwin. We wanted to make sure people weren't like drafting him in the first like 3 rounds, but at wide receiver, but because the hype sort of kind of got out of hand a little bit, but he's been phenomenal, and the talent was there. You just kind of saw it bubbling for the first 2 seasons in Tampa, and now he is finally broken out. So whatever quarterback ends up taking Jameis Winston's place in 2020, that rookie quarterback right there is going to have some nice weapons to work with.
All right, that'll do for players that are out this week. Let's talk about players that are moving in the wrong direction, trending towards out, or just have issues. I want to start with Joe Mixon because he popped up on the injury report with a calf injury. This is a new injury. We're late in the season. This is a team not playing for anything. Are you worried about Joe Mixon being shut down?
No, I think Mixon's going to play. I think he's going to be just fine. I think he's got a great matchup. So it's a great matchup for the fantasy finals. He got in a limited practice, so it's not like he was out. Obviously, we'll want to wait for what the report is for Friday and Saturday, of course. But he looks to be on the more probable side of questionable right now, rather than on the more doubtful side of questionable. So I think everybody should just kind of take a deep breath, breathe in and out. I know it's the fantasy finals, but I think Joe's going to be fine. I think he's going to play. It's probably just some little routine maintenance as well, just to make sure it doesn't get any more serious than it already is. But yeah, I think Joe's going to be fine. I don't think he's going to be limited at all. So yeah, I'm not really worried about it. If I have Joe Mixon in the finals, I'm gladly starting him in this matchup against the Dolphins. And I think this game, Murph, could be pretty interesting from a fantasy standpoint. I mean, obviously you've got Parker and Gesicki and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and then you've got Dalton. He may want to try to light it up his final 2 games as a starter in Cincy because he may be playing elsewhere in 2020. And then of course Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon. I mean, you've got some nice storylines here from an individual player perspective where it could be a nice little fantasy day.
This popped in my head while you were talking, so let me throw this out there. How would you feel if Andy Dalton was playing in Tampa Bay next year?
I mean, it would be attractive, but I just think it would be one of those stopgap. Like, I think he's going to end up being a Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Tannehill stopgap sort of quarterback, and that's fine. There's always going to be a place for those guys in the NFL. But I think a guy like Arians is probably with he's had his health issues before. He's getting up there in age. You would imagine that he wants to this is probably going to be his last head coaching stop, I would imagine, for his career. So I would imagine that he probably wants to go ahead and get a talented rookie quarterback in there to groom him as soon as possible. Now, if you bring in Andy Dalton as the high quality backup, or maybe the sort of in a Josh McCown sort of way, bring him in for the first several games as a starter, I think that's a good idea. I think you could do a lot worse than that. But I just feel like and I also don't think that's going to happen, because I think Jameis Winston's going to be back in 2020. But I also think he's going to be backing up whoever they end up drafting. So we'll see what happens. But for Andy Dalton's sake, if that were to happen, I don't think it's a bad play. I think you could do a lot worse, obviously, with the weapons around him.
All right, let's move on to Dak Prescott. He is limited with a shoulder sprain. Many sources report he's likely to play this week, but I've also seen reports that Ezekiel Elliott was asked about the injury, and he compared it to the AC joint sprain that he had and says that it's really hard to throw with that kind of injury. Are you willing to roll him out against the Eagles this week?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty fantasy-friendly game, actually. This, to me, is my game of the week. I'm stoked about this game from every single angle. And I think Dak said today that he is going to play. He's going to be good to go Sunday. So this is just, it's kind of like what I think it is with Joe Mixon in a way. They're just kind of letting him take it easy because he's probably going to get hit on Sunday. It's going to be a tough game and probably a close matchup. So, this is going to be a tough game for the Cowboys and the Eagles. And so I think they just kind of want to give him a little bit of rest and sort of kind of heal that shoulder as much as possible. But I think he's going to be fine. And I'm starting Dak Prescott like I normally would. So I'm not super worried about Dak's injury here.
All right, well, same game then. Jordan Howard's the next guy on my list. He practiced, but that's kind of been the red herring for the last few weeks. He is still not cleared for contact. Is this a Miles Sanders smash bot kind of game?
I won't say smash game. I think last week was obviously the smash game. I think he kind of comes back down to earth a little bit. I love Miles Sanders. He was my number 2 rated running back in this draft. And I think that he's obviously in a solid spot, in a solid match, especially if Jordan Howard sits. Doug Peterson said, I think yesterday morning that he pretty much remained status quo. So really not a whole lot of news there. It looks like nothing has changed from that aspect. So he hasn't been cleared for contact, like you mentioned. So that's not a good thing. I would imagine he's probably going to be inactive, but maybe he could be a surprise. Maybe he'll at least dress for the game and they'll kind of see how he feels throughout, maybe after halftime or something. But as far as Miles Sanders goes, I think he's more of like a mid to back end RB2 this week. It's not really a matchup that I'm super excited about, but comparing it to other starts that I could have, I would play him over DeAndre Washington, a guy we just mentioned, but I'm not playing him over another guy we just mentioned in like Mike Boone or Joe Mixon.
All right, fair enough. Some other guys that are kind of trending in the wrong direction. Taylor Gabriel still out with that concussion, has not practiced. So you can go ahead and pretty much count him out for the week. Mecole Hardman was a late addition to the injury report with a glute injury. And Nelson Aguilar still dealing with that knee. Again, none of these are set in stone. Like Chris mentioned earlier, check the reports on Friday and before games on Saturday. Just keep an eye on this kind of stuff. Let's move into players trending in the right direction. I want to start out with DJ Chark, kind of a fan favorite this fantasy season. He returned to practice, although he was limited with that ankle injury. Are you willing to roll out DJ Chark in a championship week?
I don't know.
Scary.
I mean, look, he's playing Atlanta. He's playing my Falcons. So I understand the allure of maybe wanting to play him. It was a limited practice today. And look, only 9 teams have yielded more passing yards per game than the Falcons. And that's at 253.7 yards per game. So we're obviously susceptible to the pass in our secondary. So this is another game that has the looks of a nice fantasy day, but I think that's more so for Leonard Fournette than anybody else on that Jags offense. So again, it depends on my options as always, but if I'll compare it to somebody again, like we just mentioned, Sterling Shepard. If I have Sterling Shepard or DJ Chark, I will probably play it safe with Sterling Shepard for that higher floor. But again, I mean, if you're playing a team who you have a feeling is going to beat you, then you might want to play the ceiling play, and that would obviously be DJ Chark. So again, it depends on who you have, but it's likely a dice that I'm not going to be willing to roll. I guess I'd have to see the reports on Sunday morning, see how he feels. But as of right now, no, DJ Chark is not an option that I'm like jumping to get in my lineup right now.
Okay, so next up, I've got Damian Williams. He also returned to practice in a limited form. He's dealing with that rib injury. He practiced limited last week, and then a late designation flipped him to out for the game. Back again this week practicing. They're playing the Bears. Are you going to risk it on any running back for the Chiefs this week?
I'm not risking it with Damian Williams at all. No, I think I'll pass on that. But yeah, I think that this is there's obviously guys that you're not benching. You're not benching Tyreek. You're not benching like Pat Mahomes or anything. But I'm not touching LaShawn. I'm not touching Damian Williams. I'm not touching that backfield at all. So just you can kind of count me out on that. Really, the only guys I'm interested in starting this week in that game are obviously Pat, Tyreek, Travis Kelce, and then Allen Robinson for the Bears. And that's essentially it. So 4 players in that entire game.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. They wouldn't play any Cohen or Montgomery or any running back for, the Chiefs. 100% agree with you on that one. All right. And finally, just another player turning in the right direction. Julian Edelman. He's practicing with that shoulder and knee injury. He played last week, played through the injury. I think he'll do the same this week. The Patriots seem to want to win every game. They're not going to sit anybody. So I think you're full go on Edelman, especially if you've been playing him all season. You're going to have to play him this week.
Yeah, it is risky, though, because the last time they played Buffalo, it was in Buffalo. Now, he was targeted 7 times, but he only caught 4 of them for 30 yards, and that was his day. And he had a fumble on the day as well. So it's a risky move, but if you don't have a better option, then I guess you got to get him out there. I do think it's going to be a competitive game. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think a lot of people expect the Patriots to just blow the Bills out because it's in New England, and they're fighting for the division and all that. And I don't think it's going to be a blowout. This is not the New England of old. I do think they are going to get it figured out. I have previously picked them to appear in the Super Bowl, losing to the Seahawks ultimately. So I think they're going to get it together. But at the same time, this is not. I don't. The Bills' defense is nothing, to sort of scoff at. So I don't think it's going to be the prettiest day in the world for the Patriots offense. So I think this is going to be. I think this has the makings of like a 17-13 kind of game. I really do. I just don't think it's going to be a very attractive game from a fantasy perspective. So I'm probably not playing Julian Edelman, to be honest with you, if I have him. But we'll see how it goes. But last time they played Buffalo, again, 4 catches, 30 yards. Really not something that you really want to see out of Julian Edelman.
Something kind of outside of fantasy. So I want to point out a phrase you mentioned there that the Patriots are still playing for the division. Since the days of Revis Island with the Jets, how often have you said this late in the season the Patriots are playing for the division? Never. Never.
Thank
you, Bills.
How often since 2001 have we said that? Not very often, right? I mean,
very rarely.
It's been a long time, and so it's interesting. You got to think that the greatest head coach to ever do it and the greatest quarterback to ever do it are going to get this offense ready to go. Josh McDaniels included in that as well. So we'll see what happens, but right now, with 2 games to go until the playoffs, they need something. They need a spark. I still think, my boy Damian Harris needs to be activated. I think he could be that much-needed spark they need, especially in that running game. But we'll see what happens. But New England is definitely a team that a lot of people are trending down on, to say the least.
You dropped the Damian Harris bait. I'm not going to take it. Let's move on to guys that are likely to play. Just a quick list here. Julio Jones was limited with a shoulder. Curtis Samuel limited with a knee. I'm just going to say all these guys were limited. Jarvis Landry with his hip, Odell with his groin, Noah Fant with his shoulder, Will Fuller with a hamstring, Juju with a knee, and Derrick Henry did not participate in practice with a hamstring, but this feels like rest. He didn't participate most of last week and then rushed for 80 yards and a touchdown or so last week. So no worries on that front. I want to kind of pivot back to Odell Beckham real quick though, because with this groin injury, which I believe was also it's a little bit deeper. The words escape me right now, but it's a worse injury than just say a groin injury. Are you trusting him in your championship week? Because he's the reason I'm out of contention in a couple of leagues. If you have him, he's on your bench. No. Any interest in playing him, or are you just benching him for the rest of the year?
No, not at all. This is not. We talk. You guys hear me say all the time on the show and FSA, all that kind of stuff. You hear me say all the time. Play your studs. Trust your best players. The problem is we're 16 weeks into the season. Okay, we know that Odell Beckham is not one of our best players this year. It's just not. So there's no reason. It's fine to treat him that way if he's having 4 bad games, weeks 1 through 4, and then you still trot him out there like an elite fantasy wide receiver in week 5. I get that, but with the season he's had so far, you can't do that in going into championship week. And it gets to a certain point in the season where it's like, okay, this is what he is this year. There is no turning back. There is no change. Now, he might have a blow-up game here or there, but it's unlikely. And no, I'm not. I have zero interest in starting Odell Beckham this week. Zero.
The word I think I was looking for was hernia. I think it's been compared to like a hernia-type injury. So the fact that he's played through this, though, I'm going to commend him on that. I think next year people might sleep on him a little bit, and he'll be healthy and be a much better player.
Oh, yeah, 2020 is a different story, especially because he might request a trade. He says right now that he's going to be back in Cleveland, but we'll see how that dog and pony show ends up. But regardless, I think 2020 is a better year for Odell Beckham. And again, but it all lies with Baker Mayfield. Baker's got to be better, and that's the bottom line. So we'll see how that turns out.
All right, that'll do it for Injury Roundup. Chris, we haven't done one of these on the Fantasy Takeaway in a while, so I'm happy you're here with me for this. We're going to do a mailbag.
Oh.
Mailbag.
All right, our first question. I have 2 wide receivers and 1 flex position to fill. Full PPR, Perryman versus Houston, Diggs versus Green Bay, Hilton versus Carolina, Sanders versus the Rams, and Drake playing Seattle, Kenyon Drake. So 2 wide receivers and a flex. What are you thinking here, Chris?
So what I like to do when people ask me start sit questions, I like to look at the options and I like to go ahead and lock in the guaranteeds. With Brashad Perriman in such a nice game script scenario coming up here against Houston, where they're going to be tossing the ball around a ton, and he is the de facto number 1 wide receiver now for the Bucks with Godwin and Evans out. He's a lock. You're starting him. There's no question about it. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen's back. It hasn't been, it wasn't an Adam Thielen week last week. But in a pivotal division game, you got to think that Stephon Diggs is going to step it up. He's literally the best player on this list here. So I think Diggs is the number 2 guy. For your third wide receiver, you're going to go with T.Y. Hilton. You can't trust Emmanuel Sanders. Everybody was flipping out last week, rushing to their lineup to start Emmanuel Sanders, and we're telling them on the show, we're like, no, we can't do that. It is a fluke. Last week was an absolute fluke. He is way too inconsistent to trust in your lineup during these pivotal one and done weeks. It's the same here. He might go for 38 fantasy points. He's probably not even going to get you 10. Okay. So I would not even consider Emmanuel Sanders over T.Y. Hilton. Go with T.Y. Hilton, take the better player, take the better matchup. And I would definitely go with Hilton, Diggs, and Perriman there at wide receiver. Now the flex, you're absolutely going to go with Kenyon Drake. So he's red hot right now. He's one of the most efficient running backs on a per touch basis in the NFL. Kenyon Drake is phenomenal. So you are benching Emmanuel Sanders.
It was 2 wide receivers and a flex. So your top 2, Perriman and Diggs.
Oh, 2 wide. You're right. Okay, so it would be between, a lot of people are going to say, okay, so Diggs and Perriman are locked in. I'm sorry, I thought it was 3 wide receivers.
No, you're fine.
Diggs and Perriman are in for sure. They're locks. So it's a decision. You're benching Sanders, so it's a decision between T.Y. and Drake. You're starting Kenyon Drake as your flex.
100%. All right, we are on the same page on that one. Let's move on to the next question. Again, full PPR. He needs 2. Kareem Hunt, Todd Gurley, Kenny Golladay, Le'Veon Bell.
This is a much tougher question.
Very much tougher, yes.
It's a much tougher question because it's hard to say you have to sit Kenny Golladay, but with David Blau as the starting quarterback right now for the Lions, how much can you really trust Kenny Golladay? Todd Gurley, I think you're going to start here. I'm not that crazy about Todd Gurley this week. I have him as maybe like a top 15, 16 running back, but not a top 10 running back like you would normally hope him to be. But I think you got to put Gurley in there this week. The divisional game, it's probably going to be a close game. They're going to be running the football. They'll get Gurley involved. So Todd is definitely going to be one of the 2 you're going to choose here. And I'm going to be honest with you, in a revenge game against Pittsburgh, go ahead and give me Le'Veon Bell. I'm not touching Kareem Hunt against Baltimore. So I think that Le'Veon Bell is going to be the choice for me. So Bell and Gurley with Golladay a close third, but Golladay would be the number 1 option here if Matthew Stafford was healthy, but alas, he is not. So it's going to be Gurley and Bell. I'm not thrilled with it. I'm not doing cartwheels over here for those 2 choices, but I think that Todd and Le'Veon are probably your best options out of those 4 names.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is really scary playing Todd Gurley. I mean, this is a divisional game. The Niners need to win every divisional game and beat the Seahawks to win the division. So it's one of those things where it's just a really scary situation to roll Todd Gurley out. But you're right. Gurley's got the highest upside. The revenge game narrative for Bell is very fun. And I think I'd rather do that than play Kareem Hunt. I mean, Kareem Hunt's got decent upside as a pass catcher, but it's one of those games where Nick Chubb has just gotten so much work still that he's the only one you're guaranteed to play in that Browns backfield. If you played Hunt and got a big game out of him, that's great, but you can't really expect it. All right, the next question, I kind of alluded to it earlier. With Godwin and Evans out now, are we trusting Winston in the championship week? Brayton and Howard are still quality targets, and Perriman has been flashing. You also mentioned Justin earlier. What is your take on this whole Buccaneers passing game?
It's obviously not ideal, but I think depending on who your quarterback options are, yes, you're trusting Jameis Winston. Now, obviously, the guys you are starting Jameis Winston over, well, let's just go through that list, and we'll make it easy for the person asking this question. Lamar Jackson, Drew Brees, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, and that's probably about it. And I think Kirk Cousins is probably arguable, the only arguable name there. Everybody else, you are starting Jameis Winston over everybody else. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think an argument could be made, but I'm going to trust Jameis Winston more than Ryan Fitzpatrick here with this matchup and this game script scenario coming up. So Jameis to me is still a top 10 quarterback for me this week, but more of the back end rather than the front end like we've seen him before. He's projected for like 23, 24 fantasy points this week. So look, they're at home against Houston. Houston against opposing quarterbacks. Murph, they are 28th in the NFL against opposing quarterbacks in yards given up per game. They are 29th in the NFL against opposing quarterbacks in touchdowns given up per game. They are 29th in the NFL against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy points given up per game. So you are absolutely starting Jameis Winston this week. It is. I mean, imagine he might be a top 3 quarterback this week if Godwin and Evans were healthy. Even though they're not, Watson and Brate and Perriman should be able to pick up that slack. Notice I did not say O.J. Howard. I am not a fan of O.J. Howard. If you are choosing between O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, I would implore you to choose Cameron Brate due to the good chemistry that Jameis and Cameron have. But regardless, we'll set O.J. Howard aside. Yes, in short answer, you are trusting Jameis Winston this week as a easy top 10 quarterback. All
right, let me throw out some names here, just kind of see how you trust Winston against some other guys. Are you playing him over Drew Lock, who's playing Detroit this week?
100%. Not even close.
Are you playing him over Ryan Tannehill, who has a decent matchup against the Saints?
Closer, but yeah, not even. I mean, it's not an option for me. I'm definitely choosing Jameis Winston over Ryan Tannehill there.
Matt Ryan against Jacksonville.
No, I will play Matt Ryan over Jameis, but that is very, very close. Now, I know that Jacksonville is better against the pass, but again, Matt Ryan at home, last 2 games of the season, the Falcons are obviously playing some decent football right now. They want to close out the season on top. Obviously, Dan Quinn is probably going to get fired at the end of the year, so this is a team that they love Dan Quinn. They want to play hard for him. So yeah, I'm starting Matt Ryan at home, but it's so close, Murph, that I'm not going to chastise anybody for starting Jameis Winston over Matt Ryan. But I guess I will go. I will take Matt Ryan just slightly over Jameis there.
The last name I had was Sam Darnold, who's playing Pittsburgh. Winston over Darnold?
100%. Not that one's definitely not close.
Gotcha. I just want to throw out a little shout out here to Brett Coleman. He's a YouTuber, does a lot of football videos. He has a pretty interesting one about how Minkah Fitzpatrick's entry into the Steelers defense has completely turned that defense around. If you want a good watch, I highly suggest it.
Yeah, it has, and it's amazing. I think one thing that's we're talking. I hear people talk about Minkah. I hear people talk about James Conner coming back and even Devlin Hodges and all. But why are we not giving credit where it's actually due? Mike Tomlin has done a fantastic job staying in the AFC playoff hunt. It's amazing with losing Juju, losing Big Ben, losing James Conner, losing Antonio Brown. I mean, are you serious? Nobody. When Big Ben went down, nobody thought they were going to compete for a playoff spot, much less the division. And they're not competing for the division, but they didn't think they were going to be competing for a playoff spot. But here they are on their 3rd string quarterback and still no Juju Smith-Schuster just yet. James Conner's back, but he's not James Conner, 100% right now. It's amazing. It's amazing. Hats off to Mike Tomlin. He's done a hell of a job for the Steelers this year. So just a very, very underrated football coach.
Yeah, and as much as we all hated on that trade earlier in the year, I mean, again, Minkah is just huge on that defense, and the defense is one of the reasons they're still in contention. I got some stats here. Before they got Minkah in that trade, yards per play, 24th, first down percentage, 27th, turnover percentage, 21st, touchdowns allowed, 27th, field goals allowed, 25th. I won't even continue from there. But when they got him, yards per play, 3rd, first down percentage, 4th, turnover percentage, 1st, touchdowns allowed, 2nd, field goals allowed, 5th. There's a trend here. That's huge.
There is a trend. That is true. And he has done an amazing, he's a Steelers football player. Like he is one of those players that is just a Steelers type defensive football player. And when that trade happened, I was like, it just makes sense. It just makes sense that he's a Pittsburgh Steeler now. So So yeah, he's done wonderful things for that team, and we'll see if they end up making the playoffs. I don't think they will, but it's amazing that they're still in playoff contention after the season they've had.
All right, and our final question, I actually got this message to me while we were recording. I'm going to throw it in here. With Cook and Madison likely out, obviously if Madison plays, you're playing him, but if Madison's out as well, would you play Mike Boone or Russ Mostert?
I'm playing Mike Boone. I'm playing the guy that's going to get a huge workload if Alex and Dalvin are out. Raheem Mostert, he proved last week. Now, I said it last night on the RotoBros podcast. He had a nice few weeks, and that was great, and that was wonderful, and we were all impressed and all this kind of stuff. But that is a backfield that wants to use a bunch of running backs. Okay, they are not interested in giving anybody 30 touches. It is as much as we would like to see the Raheem Mostert show. That's not what it is. It's just one guy having the hot hand and then riding him for a couple games. Right now, Raheem doesn't have the hot hand anymore. I don't think really anybody does. But while he might still be the best option in that backfield from a fantasy standpoint, that does not mean that he is a good fantasy option this week, and I'm not playing him anywhere. I am absolutely playing Mike Boone. He's playing, in my opinion, behind a better offensive line. He is playing behind he's played behind Dalvin Cook and learned from Dalvin Cook all season long. He is 100% fresh, and he's in a very pivotal divisional game. So I think this is going to be an excellent spot for Mike Boone. If he does draw that start, I think he's going to be a pretty solid play. I think he's definitely a lock for a top 15 running back play this week, and I would argue he is probably going to be a top 10 running back play as well.
All right, Chris, that'll do it for this episode. Again, thank you so much for jumping on with me. I know that Jeff and Joe wish they were here, but it was nice to be able to just message you and have you jump on for this episode.
Dude, it was a blast. I love being on with you guys. We're going to obviously team up, in a bunch of different ways on your show, on our show, all off season long. So it's going to be fun. It's been a blast helping everybody out. So everybody listening, best of luck this week. I mean, go get that hardware, bring it home, and go get those W's. So best of luck. Hope everybody had a great season, and I know we're all just happy to help you guys out. And again, thank you guys for listening, because there's really no reason to do this if you guys aren't listening and having fun with us and interacting. So thanks to everybody for that. And like I said, best of luck this week.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Before we let you get out of here, though, Chris, I do want you to let our listeners know where they can find you, where they can follow you, about your show, just anything you want to plug, do it right now.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Mind of McConnell. You can find me on Facebook at FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis. Go to Facebook, type in FSA Fantasy, the largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. You will not regret it. It is a blast. It's where we met Murph and Joe. So the magic happens there. So it's a magical place of wonder, is what it is. But an even better place to find us is every week. On the RotoBros Fantasy Football Podcast with myself and Mark Wimpkin. We are 23 episodes in to our podcast and our show, and it's been an amazing season. We've had a blast with everybody, and it doesn't stop for football season. We're going year round, baby. So we got a lot of stuff coming down the wire. So definitely check out the RotoBros Fantasy Football Patreon. You can find us on all major podcast streaming platforms.
All right, and finally, one last reminder, set your lineups early. There are 3 games on Saturday. Please don't be that guy that forgets in championship week. Also, treat this like a Thursday night game. Don't flex your Saturday players. I don't feel like that needs to be said, but I'm going to say it again anyway.
Please don't flex your Saturday players.
Just because it's not Thursday, people are going to be like, I can flex them. No, don't do it. Rookie mistake. Win your championships. All right, until next week, for Chris at Mind of McConnell, for Joe at Human Stat Sheet, for Jeff at NFL_DiMatteo, and of course myself at Murphy50. We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Takeaway Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And follow the show on Twitter at FF Takeaway.